Hello, everybody. I am thrilled to be here with Morgan Harper, who is running in Ohio to be the most progressive and best senator yet. And
Yes.
also would be the first Black woman to be a senator in Ohio. Morgan, thank you so much for making time to talk with me.
Thanks for having me. It's cool to be here.
So May 3rd is the big day.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Well, let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to run for this Senate seat?
Whew, that's a big question, but I'll just say as succinctly as I can. I mean, I had some early life experiences that just showed me that the American dream isn't quite available to everybody in the same way. And it put me on this wild journey to just figure out what's going on and how can I do something to make sure everybody gets the chance to live out their potential, which is what I'm so grateful that Ohio gave me. And I studied public policy. I got to Washington. I worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and started to see that not all is not well in Washington, where a lot of this policy is supposed to be made. We've had a lot of money influence everything, and that needs to change. And if that's going to change, we have to have more people who are free of the special interest, free of the corporate money, and really just trying to do the right thing to be able to implement the policies we need to make that vision a reality. And, when we look at Ohio and the Senate seat, we're at a breaking point, to put it bluntly, in terms of how much working people can take in this country without getting more support to make it all add up. And that's on the healthcare front, that's on jobs, just wages. And Ohio is the epicenter of a lot of what has not been working well over the last 40 years from a policymaking perspective. And we need to win, and not just win an election, but really win to make sure that everybody across our state gets a fair shot. And so that's why I'm running for the United States Senate. Democrats in Ohio have not had a great track record of winning over the last 20 years or so. I think it's because we've been running a lot of the same types of people and not having policies and ideas that are really meeting folks where they're at, and moving in a more progressive direction is not only the right thing to do, it's also our only hope of flipping this seat in November.
Well, and something that I know you talk a lot about is that there's so many fallacies for why we don't run more progressive candidates, right? But I think the biggest one is that, we have to go to the right because that's where working people are. That's not where working people are at all. We know that. Working people, ordinary people, middle-class people believe in the policies you're running on.
Exactly. Yeah, it's such a crock of what. And the only place we need to look to know why is all of the people that we've been running who have lost in Ohio. And I don't need to tick through all the names, but anybody can do their own research and see that it has been a lot of moderate, a lot of guys of the same background that have been running and losing. And it's so interesting because I don't think that the media does a great job of covering what people want, what everyday people want. We have data that shows just how popular policies like Medicare for All, that I stand for, are in the state. And that's just not people who are progressive or describe themselves that way. I've talked to a lot of people who lean more conservatively, and they're like, what the hell? How do I not know how much healthcare is going to cost, or different procedures are going to cost? How is it I have insurance, but yet I'm going to get rejected of coverage for certain procedures? This is ridiculous. And we have no idea what's going on. And it just seems like a lot of people making a lot of money while the rest of us are just left to deal with it. And so, it's completely nonsense. In fact, some of the people who have been successful winning statewide in Ohio, like Barack Obama, who won twice, who was somebody that folks also said didn't have a shot. More recently, Jennifer Brunner has won. Melody Stewart, two women who have been able to win. And yet we continue to see from the Ohio Democratic Party running, more similar types of candidates that don't fit that profile and lose by a lot.
Well, and, I love how we always talk about, like Obama had such charisma, Bernie had such charisma. First of all, Obama did. I agree with that. But Bernie did not. Okay. Bernie is like this curmudgeonly guy in his 70s who tapped into this upwell because people cared about the policies he's speaking about. You are very charismatic, by the way. So I'm not trying to.
I'm like, which category are you putting me into?
But it's just, people are suffering. People, and I actually, I sort of take umbrage with even the way on the left we talk about it as if all these things are only hurting the very marginalized. No, I mean, the exorbitant cost of living is, like you're saying, it's hurting even upper middle class people who a couple generations ago would have no concerns about paying for college or healthcare are now like, wait a minute, my wages haven't gone up, but the cost of everything is just out of control.
Yeah, totally out of control. And that's one of the opportunities right now. So yeah, we're at a breaking point. Like I said, I do not think we can go on like this. Lots of people are waking up to that fact. And that's where we need to move aggressively to build out the coalition of people that are going to be honest about this and really push for the policies that we need to get this stuff under control so that we can, not all be rich, but at least have the ability to start a family if you want to do that. And I don't know, buy a house if that's something you want to do, and not go bankrupt from getting sick, all the essentials, right? And I think you're exactly right. I do think that, when we look at something like housing, that for so long has been a policy issue that folks have considered to be an issue of those earning lower incomes. And now it has become millennials that can't afford to buy homes, or you're in a lot of markets like in Ohio where you have all these big corporate investors that are just gobbling up homes. You get called multiple times a day, especially a lot of elderly folks. Will you sell your home? Will you sell your home? Will you sell your home? So they can put in one of their portfolios. And so now we have housing that is a middle class issue. We have childcare that was also thought of like, oh, who needs support to be able to afford childcare? Well, in this economy, almost everyone, right, could use a little bit of support in being able to provide childcare. And so that means that most of us know something's not working. Most of us now need to come together and elect people that are going to really get it done and change things. And it is not going to happen by electing somebody that has been around Washington for 20 years, like my main opponent in this primary, that has taken money from everybody under the sun, that has flip-flopped on every major issue, also under the sun, that comes before Washington for political expediency. Those days are over. It's not working. And we need people who are really going to try to just get things done in there.
Well, and I wanted to ask about your opponent because it feels almost insulting to you because you're such an amazing candidate on your own that like I don't even want to talk about him, but we have to, because that is the situation we're facing as progressives, as ordinary people in this country, where a mainstream opponent, and when they say mainstream, they mean represents the Washington elite. That's what they mean. Because he's flip-flopped on abortion. He's released this ridiculous ad that's so it's racist, yes, but it's also intellectually dishonest, where he blames China for the problems that are American domestic policy failures. The reality is that our Senate and Congress and presidency have for too long been handing out, tax loopholes to the wealthy, have been handing out government grants to companies that then take that research and exploit the American public with the, and big pharma and big tech. It's just endless. And we're going to blame China for that.
Right.
It's just,
yeah, I'm glad you brought up the ad, because I do think it is emblematic of a lot of how Washington and long-term politicians think is, yes, we have major economic issues that are facing us right now as a country. Yes, as a result of failed economic policy in the United States, we have another country, specifically, the Chinese government, that has been able to amass a lot of economic dominance, that, is building alliances that are a threat to our national security, to global security. Those things are all true. But let's be real about what has propelled us to get to this vulnerable spot. It has been politicians like my opponent, who was in this race, who has been in Washington for 20 years and overseen corporate sellout of our government, right? And it is a chasing of profits and cheap labor to increase how much money a lot of these corporate entities are earning that has fueled all of this, and to the detriment of our US manufacturing sector in places like Ohio. All true. But who's going to do something to stop that? What could have been done to stop it over the past 20 years? And who has done that? And yeah, it's so intellectually dishonest. And even more than that, I think right now people want leadership. And so if you can't talk about those things in a way that is not also stoking racially driven and racist rhetoric, that is not also feeding into some of the anti-Asian sentiment and hate crimes that are happening right now in this country, then you do not deserve to be in the United States Senate, because that means that you're not going to be very good at that job. Because our challenge moving forward as a country is going to be to find a way to talk about the economic threats that are facing us, to talk about the economic vulnerabilities that so many people are dealing with right now, and to build a broad coalition of all the different types of people that make up this country that are going to want to be a part of those solutions and finding a way to defeat Trumpism. You are not going to be able to lead us to that next phase of whatever awaits us that hopefully is going to be more positive than what we have been living through if you're going to be playing the Trump playbook. It's not happening. And you have no business being anywhere near an elected office.
Well, and it's just, people are so stressed out and scared right now, you know, how, like, this isn't even a new playbook, right? Since the beginning of industrial democracy, it's so much easier to blame immigrants or marginalized groups for the fact that, like, no, these problems are really complicated. And it's like you're saying, sure, I mean, we're always going to have economic competition with other countries, but what if we'd invested in our people?
Yeah.
What if education had been affordable and easy, and we'd created the most educated and supported workforce in the world? This is a different conversation.
Yeah. What if we didn't just care about having the cheapest stuff possible, right?
Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, because that's what this comes down to is, are we going to be able to adjust and accept that there will be an increase in, you know, some of the cost of doing business in how, you know, we have different goods be produced? Are we going to accept that adjustment? Are large corporations going to accept that they won't be able to profit as much in order to invest in the United States and United States workers?
And,
That's,
you know,
yeah, that's a bit. And then making the investments that are appropriate to produce a workforce that is healthy and able to work
right.
and participate in the economy. Yeah.
And maybe you don't need the cheapest stuff possible if that happened, heaven forbid, you know? Well, and that's what was going to be my next question. You know, Ohio, it's like this beautiful, tragic example of, like, not that long ago, states like Ohio were doing really well. And now that's not true. People have to leave where they were from, which, to move to these, you know, urban epicenters where there may be more opportunity, but, like, most people don't want to leave their communities for opportunity.
Yeah.
Most people do. There are tons of people who've been losing their manufacturing jobs, and generations that were excited about going in to good union jobs and staying where they were from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what is it like to be an Ohioan during that transition?
I do think it's been really sad for a lot of people to see where we're at as a state. And, you know, on every front, I mean, just the economic hollowing out of a lot of different regions, there's a sense of loss. And some of that loss is literal loss, because what the economic hollowing out has laid the groundwork for is the entry and the real dominance of things like the opioid epidemic that was preceded by the crack cocaine epidemic. That was then, now we're living through the fentanyl epidemic, and generation upon generation that has been overly incarcerated as well because of not good at all criminal justice policies and sentencing guidelines. And so we're at a crisis point, and I think folks are really scared. And you know, that my message though during this campaign and generally about what Washington can do to support this is, you know, there are policy solutions for all of this. We don't have a policy problem. We have a politician problem. And what it's going to take is first having the leadership that'll be honest about where we are, that's talking to people to understand that sentiment, the folks that are battling mental health crisis because of how stressful life has become in so many parts of our state. And I know this is happening around the country too. And in really investing in us with those policies like Medicare for all, like increasing the wages to make sure that they keep up with the cost of living and some of these core parts of living that are so expensive, like gas, for example, because we have not invested in public transportation. And I really want to frame it for people as, and this can be exciting, right? I mean, we are going to be able to build towards being the place that so many of us knew, you know, growing up and our parents, but it starts with the right kind of leadership and, you know, trying to bring the clean energy sector to build out even more here in Ohio. These are things that folks are really excited about. And we just need to make sure that they know to vote on May 3rd when our primary is coming up. Not to jump the gun, but I'm in go mode.
No, that's why I'm so happy. You said so many things that inspired me. I don't even know where to start, but let's start with the first one. We don't have a policy problem. We have a politician problem. I love that you say that because there really is so much intellectual firepower in this country on top of solving these problems, on top of the climate crisis, the incarceration problem. We have more prisoners in America than anywhere in the world. That should embarrass people. Like, even if you don't care about the humanitarian aspect and that doesn't tug at your heartstrings, like, that's embarrassing. And we're coming at Russia for their inhumanity, and like, we should be, but maybe we should start at home too.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's going on right now in Ohio is they can't even find people to work in the prisons anymore. It's at a level of inhumanity that not only towards the folks who are incarcerated are having to deal with, but that people who work there want no part of it either, that are willing to, rather work in a warehouse even though those are pretty high paying jobs sometimes in some of these prisons. So yeah, none of this makes any sense. It's such a waste of talent. It's such a waste of resources. But the reason it continues is because people are making money off of it, making money off of having 30% of the population that's either, incarcerated, not, living in poverty, dealing with violence on a daily basis, and not fully participating in what the economy and our lives should be about. And that's what we really need to be real about. And if we're serious about trying to implement solutions to do something about it.
Well, it's a $90 billion industry. And I think a lot of a lot of people don't realize that. It's like, this unfettered, unregulated system it's eating Americans alive, literally, through healthcare.
Yeah. And there's just so, like everything. I mean, there's just so many better ways to be doing this. I mean, one, trying to decrease just how many people we're sending there, but then also folks that are there. And this is what I hear from a lot of the community is training. Let's get resources. Let's, be able to prepare folks for free entry. Let's make sure that if you have a felony on your record, which there are so many people in Ohio with felonies on their record, that you're able to get access to housing, that you have an ability to get a job, that you're going to be able to work out of there right away. These are policies that most people support. And we, again, it just comes back to leadership. It comes back to moving with urgency. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I have committed to only serving 2 terms in the United States Senate, self-imposed term limits. We're restoring trust that politicians can be about anything but themselves. And then also that, you go there with fire in the belly, that it's not a retirement plan. I mean, this is what jobs should be, is that there's accountability for some results. And then also you are prepared to pass the baton. And this is really critical here in Ohio and in the Senate race because of who's also running on the Republican side of the race. People like J.D. Vance, Josh Mandel, some of these other characters, if you want to call them that. And that's what I do call them, because they don't come with any of their own personality or thought or ideas. They're just playing this Trump game, Trump playbook. But what are they saying? They're saying, oh, I'm not a career politician. I'm going to be able to fight. I'm going to be one of you. And so we have to have a Democratic nominee that can neutralize that rhetoric, which is very effective in a place like Ohio, where people hate politicians, where people are sick of Washington. And we cannot send somebody who's a 20-year career politician into that fight. Now, that's a fight I already started because we did 2 debates with Josh Mandel. And I showed very clearly, it's like, look, how do you check that? You check that with somebody who isn't what's come before, isn't what people are used to hearing, who also is sick of it and can credibly say, and I'm going to be very, very different from anything you've seen before, coming out of our community and ready to head to Washington.
You would just be amazing. I mean, you're going to be an amazing senator. And we need like, and this is why I love so many things about you and your campaign, but the self-imposed term limits, that this is not something you want to do forever. And that is something I feel we only have 10 minutes. So I want to ask you a more positive question, but let me end my complaining with this. I don't think people realize we have a whole class of powerful people for whom the Senate, K Street, these weird high paid consulting gigs where you just exploit the working and middle class. Like, this is their career. This is their profession. They deal in American suffering. And we can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like, I'm sorry. I'm being a bit harsh, but it's what it is. And yet they get passed off as moderates. There's nothing moderate about that. It's political violence.
Yeah, no, it really is, and it is a game, and it's disgusting, and so I see why a lot of people are repulsed by what they believe, that the system has become, because there's a lot of truth to it. And yeah, it's not a it's no wonder in many ways why we find ourselves in this position. And now it's on us to be real about it and what it's going to take to move us forward. And that's my main message to people who believe in democracy at this point, is like, we can't pretend like this is a normal time that we're living in, and you don't bring the same toolkit to a new project, right? It's like, this is a new project for us. This is a project about, do we get to actually achieve a multiracial democracy in this country that works for most of the people who are living in it? When we don't throw people under the bus in pursuit of that, like I would say this ad that my opponent put out there is a reference to, or like what, sometimes I see comments about, oh, well, my opponent can't really spend time talking about Black people because, he's trying to win. That's not winning. Okay. If we don't have an ability to win that also is being responsive to the needs of some of the core parts of our coalition, we're not winning anything, right? Let's be real. And I do think, the money piece is something that's cross-cutting. A lot of people of lots of different backgrounds get it. When I say that I'm not taking corporate PAC money, that resonates. That means that people know you are not bought and sold before you even sit at the table to figure out what you're going to do to try to support our communities. And that's a commitment, I will not waver from. So it's a necessity for anybody who's running, especially as a Democrat right now, that's trying to resonate in a place like Ohio.
Well, and that was gonna, you're bringing me to the final question I have for you, which is, you are such a positive light and such an inspiring light in a very sort of dim electoral cycle sometimes. Because then, I think that does endow that cynicism people have. We're like, okay, I'm not going to vote. It's oppression red or oppression blue. I don't, okay, so like there are mild differences, like Democrat, which I obviously don't believe that, or I wouldn't do this work, but I totally understand why people feel that way. And I guess I just wanted to hear about all the amazing things you're going to do when you're elected, and that we should all be excited about.
Well, and like I said before, I really am optimistic, because I do think the biggest barrier sometimes, and I found this when I was first running a couple of years ago, that it almost felt like an issue of first impression to be coming to people and saying, hey, we're on this unsustainable path. Have you heard? And people kind of look at me like, what is she talking about? I mean, some people were already there, but I thought that a lot of people were in their cocoons and really felt like, oh, these are low income people problems. She's talking about housing, like I was saying. And then the pandemic happened. And the pandemic is one of those earth shifting moments where you never have a before. We're never going back to what that was. And it really exposed a lot of our vulnerabilities and a lot of the truth about where we are, all of us, and how susceptible to vulnerability we all can be. And so what I've found is that's created an opening. People before who looked at me like I had three heads when I said Medicare for all, that we need to be thinking about a different healthcare system, was like, how could we possibly have a different healthcare system? And then we see vaccines for all, and people kind of like that, not having to fill out 5 pieces of paper before you could be able to just get whatever you needed from a health perspective. So that's why I'm optimistic. There's so many people out there now, and I'm finding in the state, that are ready to move on things like Medicare for all. And the data bears it out, a lot of support for it, that recognize that in order to really do something about these drug epidemics, that we can't have people jumping through a lot of hoops to be able to get access to addiction recovery services, that it shouldn't be tied to your employer, that we have the ability to address the climate crisis, that also people would look at me like, why is she talking so much about climate? And now more extreme weather events, flooding impacts people's bottom lines. Yeah, we need to do something about the climate. And there's this really clear way to do it. We need to be investing in renewable energy. We need to make sure that we're building out public transportation infrastructure. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to take a train to different parts of Ohio and not be on the road all the time? That's amazing. Let's consider it, especially with gas prices, what they are right now. I think there's some open-mindedness to what the next phase, once we get through this emergency period, is going to look like. What is it going to look like to make sure that we have young people that aren't burdened with this level of debt? Well, we can cancel what we've already got on the books, and then move forward to debt-free training, including vocational training opportunities that are going to be able to make sure that we're preparing a workforce that's fully aware of their options and choosing just what is the best fit for their talents. that's what I want. And I'll just end with, I was asked the other day by a young woman on a call about, what are my tips for resiliency? And because they had asked me a lot of questions about what it's taken to get to this point and running for office and working in Washington, being in politics, being in law and government. And my response was, I don't want you to spend a lot of time having to develop all these tools for resiliency. I want you to be able to thrive. I want you to be able to just take your talent and go. And that is what the American dream is about. And that is what we need to make sure that we are creating for as many people across our state, across this country as possible. And to me, that's what the progressive movement is about, is having government put or lay the groundwork for making that vision a reality. And we just need to have as many spokespeople out there spreading the word, talking about it, and really orienting people to what is going to ensure that we are a place of the future.
Well, I love that you said that because, Morgan, like your story is so powerful. You have overcome so much to be an Ivy League lawyer who worked in the White House. Like it would be so easy for so many people in your situation to start writing think pieces about how to be like stronger individually or something. And instead you were like, you know what? I don't want to waste time being resilient. I don't want other people to waste time being resilient because I love what you just said. Like, imagine in America where you don't have to be like 800% psychologically stronger than you need to be.
Yeah,
where people
Yeah.
where you can just like be smart and create things for community, which maybe that does mean a job that isn't your passion project, but pays you well enough to have a great family and a great community. There are tons of people who don't want to like be famous. They just want to be able to pay for their lives.
Exactly. And yeah, and that is within reach. And also just, fewer restrictions on our thinking. And that's what a lot of this is about, is just exposing people to a different way of being, cutting through a lot of the nonsense talking points that have left people accepting our current state as the only possibility. And breaking through all that so that we can all, reach towards greatness. I think it's possible, and we don't have a lot of time to waste because, as we know, a lot's at risk right now, and people who would rather spend time passing "Don't Say Gay" bills than solving problems. And we know what that's about. I mean, that's about restricting freedom for everyone who doesn't fit into a very small subset of identities for people in this country. It's about control. It's about power. And how do you overcome the power of a few? Will you mobilize the many? And that's what we need to be focused on in this electoral cycle and beyond, to make sure that we really protect what this country is meant to stand for.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for being here. The final thing, and like this is me saying this, not her, please donate to her campaign because there is like, it's how many weeks now? Like 3 weeks?
3.5, 4 weeks.
3.5, 4 weeks. Till the primary. And I mean, don't you want to see this woman in the Senate? Because I definitely do. Can we trade you for Joe Manchin? I know that's not how it works. But
yes, yeah. He can keep the House vote. I'll take the Senate seat.
Yes, exactly. I think that's great. He should get something. Okay, consolation prize.
For sure.
Thank you so much for being here. Let me put the Chiron up with your website up. Go to morganharper.org. Donate, volunteer, get involved, talk to people, because you are the future of this country, not the nonsense we've been dealing with since the Reagan administration. So
yes, Ohio needs it. Ohio needs it. Thank you, Jocelyn. No, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Morgan.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.